It's always exciting to purchase a brand new Rolex. I'll get into how I got this watch, put it on the wrist, and compare it to my other DateJust. This will be a slow-paced video, so you can enjoy the close-ups or you can skip forward to the end. But let's go ahead and unbox this watch. The white outer sleeve is sometimes tight, so the best way to remove it is not by pulling out the box, but by setting it up on its end and lifting the white sleeve up. The typical medium-sized cream-colored outer box is embossed with the Rolex logo, and lifting up the top, the bottom front edge just falls forward. And here it is, that beautiful DateJust with the slate dial and the Roman numerals outlined in green. And I have this one on the smooth bezel and the Jubilee bracelet. It's not the most popular DateJust, but it is one of the more popular ones. I was lucky to find this in stock in the display case at the authorized dealer, and it had been sitting there for only 1 week. It came with everything, extra links on the bottom, the green hang tag on the left, the white hang tag on the right, and the booklets in the back, and the service warranty card. The salesperson was very experienced and he did everything correctly and efficiently. He went through a checklist of what to do during the purchase. I'm not sure if that came from Rolex or from the actual store, but this warranty card looks and feels much nicer than the previous version, and he even wrote down the date in the correct format. The whole process only took a few minutes, and it felt like I was just in and out. I drove there initially to put my name down for a Daytona. I'd been to this AD last in May, and at that time they only had 3 watches for sale, so I wasn't sure what they would have this time. But it did say they're starting to get more supply, and this time they had 12 Rolex for sale and about 12 exhibition pieces. So they had a nice day date 40 with the white dial. And they also had a Wimbledon DateJust 41, but that was in two-tone. And they had a nice Oyster Perpetual 34 with the black dial. Rolex has a long relationship with tennis. They sponsor the major tournaments and they sponsor several of the pro tennis players. It's a smart marketing strategy associating Rolex with prestige and luxury. So the Wimbledon DateJust is not an official name. It's just a nickname, just like the root beer or the Batman or the Pepsi. I think the only official nickname is the James Cameron Deep Sea. But the rest of this watch has that same pure Datejust quality. The streamlined oyster case, the screw-down crown, and the updated movement with the 72 hours power reserve. This is my only watch with a smooth bezel and a Jubilee bracelet. I find it a little bit odd to pair those two together. I usually associate the fluted bezel with the Jubilee bracelet, but I think this looks nice also. I would have taken either bezel, but this is what they had in stock. The Jubilee bracelet is extremely comfortable, and the whole watch is lightweight because there's no gold in the bracelet or the bezel. The Easy Link extension is nice to have, and I use that frequently to get the right comfort on my wrist. I have a 6.5 inch wrist, and I usually remove one link on each side with an oyster bracelet, and with the Jubilee bracelet, I removed 2 links on each side. I'll show some more wrist shots later, but the 36 millimeter size with the Rolex is the best size for me, and it's also the most comfortable. The case is very thin and sits flat on the wrist, and the lugs curve down to contour to the shape of the wrist. And the bracelet lug width maintains that substantial 20 millimeters, so it keeps the watch from looking too small or dainty. And on the other side, the Oyster clasp adds some bulk and heftiness to the watch also. It's always fun to wear a larger 40 or 42 millimeter sports watch, especially on the weekends or at home, but sometimes that gets tiring on the wrist, and slipping on a 36 millimeter DateJust during the work week, wearing it with a suit and tie is more appropriate, and the shirt cuff can easily slide over this watch. I hadn't worn this watch yet, except for taking it home from the AD. So while it's still in pristine condition, I went ahead and did some macro shots. The normal views were taken on my SL2S with the 24 to 70 zoom lens, but with the macro shots, I'm using the 60 millimeter Apo Macro TL lens. I had some issues with getting proper exposure on my previous videos, but I think it's better now. I learned that you have to take it off automatic and put it into manual, and to manually adjust the ISO and the aperture. The microphone is still the Rode shotgun microphone. I had been having some crackling issues on my last couple videos, but I think it's less on this video. I mentioned that this watch is all steel, but there is some gold used for the hands and the index at 9 o'clock and the applied Rolex crown at 12 o'clock. On some views, it looks like it's yellow gold, but it is white gold. Looking up close, everything looks clean and flawless. There's no scratches on the hands. The slate sunray dial is beautiful up close, and it really does play with the light. The typeface is crisp with the lettering on the dial front and the numerals along the outer chapter ring. But the Roman numerals are what makes this watch the Wimbledon. From a distance, it looks like the color of the Roman numerals are a dark green, but up close, they're actually black and outlined in a bright green, almost like a Rolex green. And this green complements the dark gray of the slate dial. And the green really pops in bright sunlight, and that's when you really see it. So there's a lot of changes with this watch according to the light. The slate dial turns a dark, almost black in low light, along with the Roman numerals. And in bright light, it's a steely, cool gray with the bright highlights of the green around the Roman numerals. I just took some time to look at the finishing on this watch, and I think Rolex did a great job with the finishing on this particular watch. Even though it might not be all hand finishing, I think everything looks great, great quality, and I don't see any defects. I just noticed that small piece of sticker still attached to the top of the left upper lug, but wherever things are polished, they come out to a high polish and a high shine. So the entire front of the case and the sides of the case are polished, along with the smooth bezel and the center links. And the screw down twin lock crown has a sharp knurling and high shine to that also. You can tell it's twin lock by that underline under the crown. With the triple lock crown, there would be three dots. And the satin brush finishing It is also beautiful to look up close. So the outer links of the bracelet are brushed, and I just noticed another piece of sticker on the bottom right lug, so I'll have to remove that. But the brush finishing extends into the clasp, and it all looks very high quality. The case back is plain according to Rolex tradition. The only Rolex with printing on the case back are the Milgauss and the Sea Dweller. And I thought I saw a gash on the side of the case, but that's actually another piece of sticker that's still stuck on. I tried to keep the fingerprints at a minimum, but I haven't purchased those jeweler's gloves yet. Going on to the inside of the clasp, it's also a high polished surface. It has that Rolex engraving on one of the wings with the Geneva and Swiss made. The wings themselves feel sturdy and they're made from a solid milled steel. And on the other side, it says Steel Inox, and it has the bracelet code and the name Rolex SA, which is the name of the parent company. Inside the clasp is all plain polished steel. Let's see how this watch sits in my DateJust collection. I admit I still have a DateJust addiction, but the DateJust I think is still underrated. It's a classic watch, and there's so many variations available. Now I have all the bezel variations and bracelet variations, except I don't have a yellow gold two-tone, and I don't have the smooth bezel oyster bracelet. Comparing directly, I think these two look the most similar. This blue dial watch is the previous version, 116234, and you can notice the lugs are slightly thicker than the current version. And on the current version, they replaced the 9 o'clock with a little hashtag index marker. The fluted bezel with the Jubilee bracelet looks more classic for a Datejust, but it adds $1,250 to the price tag. And turning it over, this is a giveaway that the blue dial is the previous version because that has the hidden crown clasp. I actually like the oyster clasp better on the Jubilee bracelet. It gives more heft and substance to the bracelet and balances out the watch head. And comparing this with the pink dial Datejust, they both have Roman numerals, but looking closely, it looks like the Roman numerals on the pink Datejust looks slightly smaller, except it has diamonds at the 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock, and of course in the bezel. The bezel is still a white gold, but it's studded with diamonds, and this adds a lot of bling to the watch, but is slightly toned down because of the oyster bracelet. Both of these dials change character according to the light. The pink dial looks like a bright pink with artificial light. With warm lighting, the dial softens up and it turns into a salmon colored dial or even almost a champagne colored dial. Comparing with the two-tone DateJust, the dial color is actually exactly the same. They're both a slate dial, but everything else is different and it gives a totally different character to it. The two-tone DateJust is classy and dressy and prestigious, and it stands out more on the wrist, and it feels heavier on the wrist because of the gold. And there's also gold surrounding the index markers, so it's high contrast and easy to read, as opposed to the Wimbledon dial, which is more subtle and more stealthy and has that look of cold steel. Comparing it to the silver dial Datejust, here you can see the big difference in the dial color. The silver dial looks almost white compared to the slate dial, but the legibility on both of these is not great. But I think the silver dial Datejust has a slight edge with the legibility. And the silver dial also adapts to the lighting situation. It turns into a creamy color with soft and warm lighting. The configurations are exactly the opposite with the bezel and the bracelet. But again, the bezel adds $1,250 to the price tag, and the Jubilee bracelet adds $250. Sadly, the luminescence is not great with this watch, but I don't think it's a big deal. The only lume parts are the 9 o'clock and the hour hand and the minute hand. On the wrist, the size is appropriate for my 6.5-inch wrist. I think because of the case design and the longer lugs and the 20 millimeter lug width, I think this fits more like a 37 or 38 millimeter in some other brands. It feels lightweight on the wrist compared to a gold watch, and it almost disappears. And this is also because it's a very comfortable watch to wear, and you can forget that you're wearing it. There's no negative sensations with wearing this watch. There's no pinching or tight feeling or pulling. And that's not actually easy to do because some other brands don't do this nearly as well. It's also very easy to get the right fit by adding or removing links. There's also micro adjustments in the clasp, and the Easy Link extension is also convenient. I've never had a problem getting the right fit on either the Jubilee bracelet or the Oyster bracelet with the DateJust. The colors are stealthy and it has a low profile, so it doesn't stand out. And the green on the Roman numerals complements the slate gray perfectly. I think I might prefer just a little bit more color on the dial, maybe a yellow gold crown at the 12 o'clock, or some small yellow print, similar to the yellow and green color scheme of the Air King. The Wimbledon is one of the more popular DateJust designs, and it's listing for $2,000 to $4,000 over retail price on the gray market. I don't see prices coming down this winter, even though my AD said they're starting to get more supply. I think they're the exception. They had 12 models for sale in the display case, but I think most of the ADs around the world are still empty. I mentioned before that I came to ask for a Daytona. I have my name down at another AD with no purchase history, asking for a two-toned Daytona with a black dial, but I've been on that list for almost a year now. They did call me last week and asked if I was still interested in it, that they might be getting one soon. And I said yes, definitely. But then he said they were just going through the list and seeing who was still interested. But I haven't heard back since then. So I think it probably went to someone else. So with this AD, I now have a 5 watch purchase history. They're still not taking pre-orders on anything. so they can't request a specific watch from Rolex. But I asked him, would it be out of the question to get a white gold Daytona? And he was nonchalant about it, and he said, not at all. They do have a registry, so he put my name down on the registry of interest into the computer system, and he said they'll just wait for the next gold Daytona to come in, and I can have it. I'm not 100% sure that's true, but it is something to hope for. I'm also on the list at another AD for the Explorer 36 millimeter. I also like the Batman GMT with the Jubilee bracelet, but now that I have the Blue Dial Sky Dweller, I don't think I need the Batman as much. Let me know in the comments what your favorite DateJust dial is, and would you have picked up this DateJust now or waited for a different configuration? Thanks for watching.